We are about to start the third session that is over NFT transforming ownership through storytelling and play. So let me introduce you to Dele Atanda, who is working at metamedia. Metamedia enables people to shift from the sharing economy to the ownership economy.
Morning, everybody. I'm just going to put this down here. Okay. Is this a clicker? And forward is... Okay, got it. Morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Dele Atanda. I am CEO, chairman, founder of metamedia. Metamedia, we focus on transforming ownership through storytelling and play. We're part of a group that's the Metaproof Group, which includes data sovereignty technology through our company MetaMe, and the Internet Foundation, which is an NGO focused on digital human rights, enabling digital human rights, with a real focus on giving people a way to own data, to own themselves, to own their digital footprint. So obviously, this whole sort of crypto space has been a big contributor to that. But I'll talk a bit more about metamedia and how we go about transforming ownership through storytelling and play. But in the spirit of the power of storytelling, I want to start with a story. So, this is a story. You can decide whether it's fictional or non-fictional yourselves, but it's essentially a story about two realms. There's a realm called Terra, which is like this analog world that we all know, that we're all familiar with, and there's this digital realm called Digiterra. Now, the scary thing is that this realm of Digiterra has been taken over by a conglomerate of cyber vampires called fangs. And what they do is that they suck people's data in Digiterra, and they use that to enslave them across both Terra and Digiterra, so that they can take control over them. And the fangs are actually at war with the bats. The fangs are in the west, the bats are in the east, and they're both racing to create a super AI. And they believe that whoever creates this super AI first will have complete control over both dominions and rule both realms forever. So, they've been getting away with this pretty successfully for quite a while now. But there's been a revolution brewing in Digiterra, led by a mysterious character called Sage, who has recently been revealed to be none other than Satoshi Nakamoto. And Satoshi leads a group called cypherpunks who are fighting the fangs with decentralized technologies, decentralized AI, to liberate the world from this fang control so that they can have freedom and prosperity and to create a whole new realm and a whole new future. So these metaKnyts who have emerged from the cypherpunks and Satoshi's movement contacted me because of the work that I've been doing with the Internet Foundation and asked me to sort of become their representative sort of ambassador in this world because they're actually trying to bring Digiterra to Terra. So, without further ado, let me share some of the materials that they have shared with me. Let's see, hopefully this. All right. I don't know if the audio is working here. We're about to find out. Seems it is not. All right. So I'll talk this through. I mean, there's dramatic music and all of this stuff sort of going with it, but you can kind of ad-lib on that. But this is really sort of a first overview about this realm of Digiterra. Now, interestingly enough, the means through which information is coming to us about Digiterra is through comic books and through motion comics, which is like a special kind of digital type of animated comic. So we have these books that are being shared, which is kind of really explaining this war that is unfolding between the fangs and the metaKnyts across Digiterra that takes the form of these comic books, and then where Digiterra is real. So we're sort of working with the metaKnyts to effectively, perfect, if you can get the audio, it'd be great. Effectively to enable this, the information about this war to be shared and disseminated. And we're using a variety of crypto tools, NFTs and the like, to bring this to people. Is it on mute or something? Okay, well, let's see. I mean, it's okay if it doesn't. We'll continue going on. These things, there's always a problem with the tech on these things. So let's get into some of the characters. So here's a classic example of a Fang in Digiterra. So you can see a pretty scary looking character. They have these sabers that they use and fangs and they suck people's data. Pretty. So there's an army of these ones, and you know they exist in Terra as well. Usually they're sort of low-level operatives in some of these Fang sort of corporations. This is an important character here. So this is Tyrantus. He's the leader of a company called Facia, and he's what we call a classic face crook. So he really specializes in identity theft and stealing people's identity. They're really sort of big on biometrics and facial recognition. So they really they see that as the frontier means of actually enslaving people and capturing their data and capturing their information and capturing their identity. So they all have different powers and tools. Tyrantus is, by Digitarian standards, not one of the more powerful. He's powerful because he's got a big following and a big sort of reach, but most of his skills and powers are really technically based. So you can see there he's holding an Iborg, which are these like drone robots that go around and sort of spy on people. And then you can see those sort of like mosquito-looking things. Those are called suckerborgs, and they are really good at sucking people's data sort of remotely. But really, the head honcho that we know of at the moment is Count Roth, and he runs Roth Investment Bank. He's apparently very closely connected with the International Monetary Fang. And so he's really sort of an old world, classic finance industry, old world order control sort of guy. On the other hand, these are the cypherpunks. So this is Spartacus. His specialization is key management, breaking keys and making keys and coding keys and the like. There are a few of them. This is Sage Satoshi, no less, who's really a bit of a wizard in Digiterra. He's super powerful, and he actually connected with the Digitarian priesthood, which is another faction within Digiterra that's very strong and very powerful and have helped him considerably. And this is our sort of lead protagonist. So this is Deji, who's actually the first knight of the Order of metaKnyts. So metaKnyts is the AI that the metaKnyts are looking to introduce to bring the world forward in this new sort of framework. So, I mean, this metaKnyts saga is being unleashed. We've done a lot of work with the metaKnyts to develop this story. We've got a very richly developed lore. 13 episodes of these knight books have been produced to date to sort of bring the world the knowledge of this battle that is raging across these two realms. And there's an unparalleled set of perks and utilities for fans, collectors, and retail investors. So, as I say, it's all about transforming ownership. So not only are we introducing ownership in the guise of NFTs and the various different ways that those can exist, but also in terms of actual ownership of the company that is actually behind them. So we've been running a Reg CF campaign in the US, and I'll tell you a bit more about that at the moment. But this is just a sort of high-level view. So we've got the crypto comics, we have these Nightbook motion comics, we have a variety of other types of NFTs, including these posters, Knight posters, for example, and Knight cards, which are trading cards. We're very much focused on the young, Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. This is the generation that are going to save us from Fang domination. So that's really sort of who the target audience is in that regards. All about utilities, right? So, and for us, we see a group of three key types of utilities: monetary, social, and fellowship, which is essentially community. In terms of monetary utilities, all the stuff you would expect: priority minting, staking, liquidity pools, and bounties, and referral rewards. Social is where we really differentiate. Our social utilities include things like self-sovereign identity, democratic rights in terms of voting rights. That's perhaps a little bit more well-trodden. But certainly in terms of data protection and identity protection and self-protection across the metaverse. Because the metaverse is coming, and it is coming to this world very quickly. And we need to make sure that it is a metaverse that is safe for everyone and inclusive. And then fellowship. Of course, we're building communities. We are recruiting knights to the Order of metaKnyts currently. We have recruited numerous through various NFT projects at the moment for people who will join us in this battle. But there's a whole bunch of technologies, next generation technologies around sovereignty that we are introducing with the assistance of the metaKnyts and with the assistance of these leaders of this movement. And the Knight wallet is a classic example of this. This is a universal metaverse wallet, multi-currency, multi-chain, multimedia in terms of different types of NFT assets that can be contained with it, with rewards and loyalty all baked in automatically. Again, it's about how do we make all of this stuff accessible for Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. And this is really sort of a specific breakdown on our types of NFTs. It's really focused around storytelling, play, and identity. It's really about how do you own IP and data and yourself across that. So when it comes to storytelling, as you become immersed in this story and become part of that story, that is your footprint. How do you make that actually into something that people can own? When it comes to play, I mean, what a better avenue to immerse yourself into stories and become part of that. And we all see the exploitation that has come from we, the creators of this content, ubiquitously across these Web 2 platforms. So how do we actually transform that into something that people actually own as a result of that? And all of that is fundamentally anchored and underpinned by identity. And that is one of the most important things to own. The most important, if you do not own your identity, someone does. So how do we get people to own their identity? It's a large part of the mission. We've built these NFTs as platforms for collaboration and partnership. We're working with sports entities around this and with a lot of educational orientated institutes, including HBCU Network, the Digital Intelligence Institute, which is a World Economic Forum based organization to this end. So really sort of working around how do we use this to build partnerships in an effective, compelling way. And again, this is just a bit of another vision around our Knight Key, which is really an identity management service. This is really game-changing. We're introducing a self-sovereign social login service, which will mean you will be able to use your FANG data, Facebook, Amazon, Google data to sign into services, but break the link so that they cannot track you any further, using the blockchain to attest identity, to attest credentials, but preventing third parties from being able to follow you in your exploration and journeys across the metaverse. And that's what it's really all about, because the metaverse is where we are all going. It is coming hard and fast. I was at South by Southwest this year. It's not a crypto conference, it's a cultural conference. And it was the metaverse conference. Oh, we got video, we got audio. There we go. Fantastic. So this is really our gateway to the metaverse. Digiterra is our metaverse, and you can see the extent and the nature of it, all Unreal 5 based. But yes, I'll be quiet for a second. Enjoy this.
It's all tied, eyes glued to what you do, who you know, where you reside, sucking your life to grow the lie. Down a slippery slope we slide, we'll over your third eye, fight to change the tide. Free ride, that was a lie. Good or evil energy, it's a fight to flip the tide. Thought privacy had died, you never do. The metaKnyts. Down a slippery slope we slide, we'll over your third eye, battle to change the tide. Enter the metaKnyts.
She's badass. She's actually a baddie, that one. She's Annalise Tocchini, but there's a few different ones. So yes, really gearing up to bring people into the metaverse and to bring the metaverse here so that we can all start to get into this digitera and protect ourselves there accordingly. And you know, I often kind of wrestle with this term metaverse. I met Neil Stephenson, forefather of the metaverse at Consensus a couple of months ago. But in our law, we have Terra, the world you know, Digiterra, the digital world, which many might call the metaverse. But really, it's about metaterra, this blended world that is coming where we're bringing this together. And that is what the metaKnyts have asked us to actually help them with, to bring digiterra here to this world that you know. But in doing so, to make sure that we create an ethical, safe, and inclusive metaverse that preserves privacy. And this will enable us to bring real data into the metaverse, which is where it becomes really powerful. And in order for that to happen, you have to have self-sovereignty. We have to have self-sovereignty of data, IP, and identity, and spaces. So that's really what metaterra is about, and we're working on building that with a bunch of partners that are listed below. It's some really game-changing announcements will be coming on that space presently. And one of the things that I'm particularly excited about in this is what we've developed called metavatars. And these are really avatars that enable you to traverse the metaverse in a safe way. And you'll have a framework you can imagine. We're building a safe metaverse platform and framework, but of course you will have the freedom to go wherever you please. But you'll leave the safe metaverse in some regards. But even when you do so, through the metavatar framework, you'll be able to have a high degree of protection around your information, your IP, and your experiences. So again, look out for information around that. And I promised to give you an insight about the company. I'll let you watch this second as well.
Blockchain media company announcing the release of its metaKnyts. That's a cryptographic digital comic series.
So it's set in this world called Digiterra, which is like a digital world that mirrors the physical world. And in that world, there are cyber vampires who suck people's data.
Like,
and that's not accidental.
that Facebook, Apple, okay.
It's not accidental.
metaKnyts isn't just a graphic novel, it's a portal to the shifting future of your digital life, where extended reality and gaming meet the physical world.
One of the things we're doing with metaKnyts is we're releasing it with a wallet whereby, you know, when people sign up, they will have a self-sovereign ID.
Anything you can imagine on a playing card can be created as a digital collectible and saved in your personal media wallet.
So the idea of creating a comic series where the issues are published as non-fungible tokens is really exciting because it means that we can create collectible digital artifacts that can grow value over time. Crypto actually allows us to own these assets independently of the platform.
It only takes a few minutes to purchase metaKnyts shares on startengine.com. You can own a stake in metaKnyts and the future of digital collectibles.
God, some of those visuals really remind me of how early all of this stuff was. Incidentally, metaKnyts was the first crypto comic, the first comic minted on chain back in 2019. You know, I think I showed that because I think it's really important when we talk about ownership to be very clear. You know, you can't be ambiguous and bullshit people about this anymore. You know, it's one thing to say that we're going to enable ownership through NFTs, but it's about vertical integration, ownership all the way through to actually owning the company. So the metaKnyts franchise, in summary, you know, it's a comic, it's a game, we're in negotiations for a feature film around it. It is a metaverse, and it is a portfolio of NFTs. It's a rich, complex cyber saga, blah, blah, blah. We've raised over $1 million on a Reg CF campaign. One of the largest Reg CF campaigns for the early stage, which was $1 million, that was $1 million and 70,000 was the maximum you could raise. We raised that from over 3,500 investors, which is the largest in that sense. And that's a really important thing because we're building a community as we're building the franchise in that sense. Over 13 episodes, 6 different types of NFTs, and this year we're really focusing on crypto activating the community, as we call it. And again, this is another really important thing that I think differentiates us particularly as well, because it is about ownership, but there are very different kinds of ownership. If you think about ownership of equity versus ownership of NFTs, and this is something we educate our community about considerably. Equities give you a very particular type of asset class and ownership stake versus NFTs, and they are highly complementary. So this puts us in a really interesting position because we can work with our community to actually build our franchise in terms, and they can benefit from owning equity and NFTs and use those assets in different ways. I think one of the ladies said earlier about DeFi, the potential of DeFi in terms of things like liquidity, staking pools, is really an interesting way from a financial perspective of how you can use NFTs in a completely innovative way. So we think this is the future, to bring communities into these different types of ownership frameworks so that we can achieve financial freedom as well as social freedom through these technologies. In terms of roadmap, I mean, we're pretty far advanced. You know, the graphic novel series and the animations. Like I say, we've got 13 episodes developed. Our wallet and metaverse our wallet is in deep development, scheduled for release by the end of the year. An alpha of our metaverse game and metaverse platform we will have by the end of the year, and we are pretty far down the road with a major screenwriter from the Marvel universe to join our team in terms of developing a screenplay for a feature film and animated series and the like around that as well. So look out for news about that from us in the future. Last thing I'm going to leave you with before I take questions. This is a preview of the next episode, which is the first episode of season 1 that is about to be launched. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dele. Thank you. Has anyone a question from the audience for Dele? Yeah.
Great question. So it's a combination. Comic Republic, we retain Comic Republic as our primary comic production team. So the head writer there and I work very closely together. So I will write the overarching arc based on the information that I have been given from the metaKnyts on the story, and then we work together to then writing out the script. So like the 2 pilot episodes that we kind of penned, I was much more involved with that, but effectively I give the overarching arc and then work on the editing with a team of writers primarily from Comic Republic.
Yeah.
Funding is always the biggest challenge, I think, 100%. I think a project like ours would not exist without community support. It's nothing that VCs backed. When we started this in 2019, NFTs were not really an industry. We had to describe them as digital collectibles for people to even understand what they were. So we've really always been ahead of the market and too ahead of the market for funding. We've had no VC funding effectively to date. So that's always an obstacle, and then you get to the point that, I mean, it's become the blueprint for NFT projects today to have a comic, have an animation, or have a video game. We pioneered all of that, but you know, we haven't been able to get the gazillions of funding that a lot of these projects has. So that's been the biggest challenge, and to keep pace in that regards, but it's a much more organic growth framework that is achieved by way of the path that we've gone, even though it's a longer path. And I suppose the challenge with that is getting the community to understand that as well, because you kind of have to manage, 3,500 investors who all sort of want to see progress and angst and that sort of thing. Yes.
Thank you. I was just asking, based on the comment you just made around the tension between community funding versus VC funding, which is more money to help you build faster. Are there like any indicators from your community? Because sometimes there's a tension there, and the community, of course, since they're also part owners in terms of equity, they might not really be open to a VC funding kind of solution. I just want to know what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's a good point. That argument is starting to unfold within the crowdfunding community. I think the heart of the tension is around preferential terms for VCs, and the community can be object to that. I think one of the big advantages of crowdfunding in that regards, though, is that you kind of get to set the agenda somewhat. So, we're at that point now where obviously we are starting to entertain venture conversations as well, and we'll see where it lands in terms of preferential shares. But I think that's the heart of the tension in that regards. But with a crowd and a community, you're potentially in a better position to negotiate more favorable terms, more community-friendly terms with VCs accordingly. I think you had a question.
Yeah, following up on the fundraising, just trying to understand how did you go about that? Meaning, did you start like building and also like building a community, and then you approach VC for fundraising to actually, shift to implementation, or you needed to essentially get fundraising first in order to build the product?
The ultimate chicken and egg question, right? Ultimately, you someone described it to me the other day is like, you have to burn yourself first and then others will follow. The short answer is that we produced a pilot, 2 episodes. So we kind of had the whole idea of the concept, which produced 2 pilot episodes, and then we launched a crowdfunding campaign on Start Engine with those 2 pilot episodes to give people a sense of what it was, so it wasn't just an idea, to make it tangible. And quite frankly, that's what we really raised $1 million on the back of, basically different announcements coming. But we haven't really released, we released some NFTs, but we haven't really released the rest of the content. So, there's a lot of pepped up demand in the community now to see the story and to get it out.
Thank you very much. If you have any question, I think that Dele will be happy to have some one-to-one and networking session, but we have to indeed pass to the next session. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dele.